Harrison with you, and when I say we, there's another one of us. We're the two rebels. Let me introduce you to Rocco.
Well, it's Rocco Castellano, Cary, but most people, I don't really like that whole moniker thing because, Madonna and Cher and all those people.
Air, water.
Right. Exactly. You had a moniker for a long time, Harrison, but now it's Cary Harrison, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a quick story, Rocco, and this will help people kind of get where we're coming from. We're the two rebels because both of us live in America's biggest cities on the coast. So Rocco is a New Yorker. I'm in LA, and we're rebels because we don't exactly love where we're from.
No, we actually hate it, to tell you the truth. I can't even go back to New York. Like I get hives when I think about New York now. And I don't know how you still live in West Hollywood. It drives me insane that a friend of mine has to live in the cesspool of cesspools. Well, maybe not the cesspool of like cesspools, because San Francisco's still got to be the biggest cesspool. But
unless you're very rich and work for Facebook, it's a beautiful cesspool. Well, lockdown has a lot to do with me being here, but I'll tell you something, just so people understand West Hollywood, this is the home of the Kardashians. So all of this crap and influencers and stuff, it's all ground zero in a place. It's literally a mile long and a half mile wide. That's it. That's West Hollywood. Population 35,000. And you know this, Rocco, because it was in the New York Times. Our mayor, formerly mayor, he's now a city councilman, is one of the most notorious sex fiends who ever lived. Now you're saying, right, how can you call him a sex fiend? Well, he was in the New York Times, the online edition, 9 million hits, the article. Get this, Rocco. The guy goes on an app called Grindr. Have you ever heard of Grindr?
Yeah, well, I think I heard about this, that he was in a council meeting and trying to book Grindr.
Yes. So let's be clear.
How do you do that?
So
I don't understand.
So there's Tinder and Grindr. Grindr is the original mothership. It's for the gays. Tinder is for everyone else, I guess.
Yeah.
And so this mayor, who's a gay guy, is during city council meetings picking up constituents who are sitting in the audience of the city council
on
meeting.
Grindr.
On Grindr. He picks up one guy, they go home, they do it, and then he hires this guy as his deputy for $130,000 a year to go, hello, mayor's office, one moment.
That must have been a great Grindr date, huh?
No kidding. Now, Angela Merkel of Germany doesn't make that. Friggin' Netanyahu of Israel doesn't make that per annum, but the goddamn phone answer of the mayor on Grindr gets 130 grand plus permanent benefits and retirement through the city. I want that gig.
Well, and I don't understand how you can just have the mindset that you can justify doing that. Like, I mean, I've seen criminals, and you have to have a real criminal mind, I would have to believe, to think that a Grindr date could legitimately get $130,000 for answering the phone.
Well, yeah. So to your point, the Grindr date got smart and realized, wait a minute. The mayor still wants to do the hokey pokey, and I'm now rich. I don't have to do the hokey pokey, so I'm going to turn around and sue the city for sexual harassment.
And so goes the mayor and the Grindr date.
No, the mayor doesn't go. That's why it's West Hollywood. The mayor ends up, the city has an insurance policy. They pay out $1.5 million to this guy to go away. The mayor is rotated automatically. He's now a city councilman, and he'll be mayor again soon. That's West Hollywood.
So, yeah, but isn't that just a California, LA kind of thing? Because it's not just the gay population that that can get away with that craziness. You get away, I mean, in LA, in Venice, I've got a business partner, an awesome guy that lives in Venice, right? And he had to put a 10-foot wooden fence around his house because there were homeless people literally camped out on his lawn, taking a shower naked from his water hose, and then shitting, using his water, and then shitting on his lawn. And I'm going, Nick, you gotta get out of there. You gotta get out of there, please, for my sanity. I don't give a shit about your sanity. I care about my sanity. I need you as my business partner.
Well, we call that the California lifestyle.
Is that Californication or what is?
Yeah.
What is that?
We have
insane.
We have 80,000. Well, this is pre-COVID. So pre-COVID, in other words, on February 23rd, we had 80,000 homeless people in LA, the most per capita in the world, not dislocated by war or famine. Well, it is kind of war and famine when you think about it.
Well,
and, just roaming around. And now God knows what's going on. But what happens is there's no like government infrastructure. If you're old enough to remember King Ronald I, Ronald Reagan,
Right.
and this is probably where we're going to get into a little sword fighting with politics. But King Ronald I decided, okay, I've got Donald Rumsfeld, who runs a GD Searle company, and he's going to roll out NutraSweet, which is going to give everyone brain cancer and fucking kill them.
Yeah, it was aspartame,
right?
but
Yeah.
yes.
And right, exactly. Aspartic acid.
No, I'm actually going to agree with almost all of what you're going to say, except that Ronald Reagan still was a pretty cool guy.
Well, I have to say, I was a young kid, as were you, and nobody got on TV and made you feel better than the Gipper. And
Holy
it didn't matter
shit.
who you were.
I swear to God, I still get goosebumps thinking about him talking on that TV.
Yeah, it was kind of like the cool uncle who's got stuff handled. But what he did is, this was the advent of the invention of the first antidepressant ever to be marketed publicly, called Prozac. We've all heard of Prozac, but it's kind of an antique now. So the idea was to close all the mental institutions, all of them. And that's where the homeless people used to live because, well, and so give them a week's worth or a month's worth of Prozac and just let them loose. And here we are. And we don't have mental institutions. We don't have anything. So we have these peripatetic, unfortunate people, and some are down and out and are not mentally ill, but most of them, you see them talking to themselves and doing Shakespeare, and it's, meth and all the rest.
If you're homeless for just a little while in LA, you're going to be talking to yourself anyway. I don't care what anybody says, because just the air you breathe seems to make you want to become mentally ill, from what I've seen. But you know what? You actually taught me something right now on the podcast already, because I didn't realize that happened under Reagan. Because we all knew that the crazy. I just thought that it was the craziness of the California mindset, that it was a good idea because they like to let people out of jail. So I thought that the letting people out of jail now was just the later version of the letting the mentally ill out of the mental institution. Because any time that you're going to take somebody out of a confined space that keeps them keeps them confined. It keeps them in a regulatory state, let's just call it. You're going to ask for something that you should have known was going to happen. I don't know how something that you believing that letting people who are mentally ill out of mental institutions and thinking that they're going to take their medication when they're actually forced inside to take their medication, that you think that that's going to come out to something so utopian.
Well, so there's always a good backstory to this. Two things. One
Of
is,
course there is.
yeah, right. They only give them a month's worth of medication and you're nuts. So you're not going to be going, oh, it's 8 o'clock. I got to take my Prozac because I really understand, serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Yeah.
Well, and
So,
30 days later,
yeah.
30 days later, like you actually know what day it is.
Right. And so you're not really getting a refill. So what happens is the deal was with the pharmaceuticals, there was a way where if these medications were cleared, you close the lunatic asylums, you would be able to get a ton of people in that orbit to vote for you. Like you would get huge corporate support from these pharmaceutical companies to help you run for president. So all of this was really just an early PAC fund before Citizens United, as Mitt Romney famously said, corporations are people too, my friend, before we ever saw that. And so now we have the legacy
Don't even get me started on Mitt Romney, please. I mean, and I despised that guy before he was a Mormon, before he was a CEO, before everything else, before he moved to Utah.
Yeah, he's a piece of work, but extraordinarily, he's like the lone kind of Eisenhower Republican, and that's sort of an abstract term maybe to a lot of us, but it's like, I'm kind of proud of him standing up and going, wait a minute, this is bullshit. What is wrong with you people? Seriously, like Mitch McConnell, like, fuck you. Come on, be a man, stand up, do your job. You've got 300 bills on your desk, and you won't even present them in front of the Senate? You puckfist. Except he's much more polite.
Well, it's funny because I think that Mitt Romney's constantly doing something just to get on camera, or he's like one of those kind of assholes that you want to you want to like him, but you think that he's only doing that to get his picture in the paper, or he's a Kardashian. He's without a doubt a Kardashian. When he wants to see how many likes he gets on Facebook for saying something, right? But you have a point about Mitch McConnell, and I would love to go down that crazy ass rabbit hole, because no one, and I don't give a shit who you are, right? Republican, Democrat, Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell, anybody that's been in Washington for more than 10 years needs to be put in a box, and not a coffin, but just in a box and shipped the fuck out. Because anyone that's there for 10 years figures out how to work Washington, and how Washington really works, and how corrupt it really is. Now, when you have people there like McConnell, like Pelosi, like all these people that are literally 100 years old, right? And they've been there for 40 years, the Bidens, all these people have been there 40 years, 50 years. There is nothing that they haven't stole. They're running out of shit to steal. And McConnell, how can you even believe that guy thinks, because we all know, and we'll probably get into like the coronavirus at some time, because, no one's talking about the coronavirus for the past 5 months or so. But, how do you not condemn China for a virus that, I don't know, their scientists made, right? And then we can actually ask somebody, how'd you make this? And then maybe we can make a vaccine for it, or whatever. I don't really believe in the vaccines, and you know that, but You know, how do you not want to go after it? Well, we all know that he's making billions of dollars from China, from his wife's uncle, right? Has a huge company. So, this is all going around and nobody wants to call China out on this craziness,
Well,
right?
let's take the coronavirus twist too. So in 2015, Anthony Fauci was the one who funded the original $4 million to work on and weaponize this SARS
The
HIV
SARS,
blend, which
right?
it would become. And then it was this particular novel coronavirus was started at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Then it was sent to Australia, where it was sweetened with the HIV gene envelope, which is why it has HIV components in it. And then it was sent.
That's why it's so violent. That's why it's so violent.
Yes, given gain of function, like supercharged. Right. So you have a bioweapon that ends up in China, and they're all in bed with each other. It's like, our enemy is our enemy, except if they're German Nazis and we can bring them over after World War II and they can put us on the moon or run the heart transplant operation. They're good Nazis. Like, good communists are in China, bad communists are in Cuba. Worse communists are in Venezuela. But I thought all communists were bad. Well, it just depends on if we're making a profit or not.
Well, and that's, it's so funny that you say that because there's so many. Nike, which is a $40 billion company, 40 billion, right? Making their shoes over there. And my favorite thing ever to talk to people about is that the NBA is an $8 billion franchise company, built business, whatever. So when you're saying something bad about China at all, and Nike literally puts their sneaker on your neck and says, no, you can't do that, because those 8-year-olds that are lacing up our shoes need to keep lacing up our shoes. So we don't want you to talk bad, because for some reason, I don't know why, people in China don't like you talking bad about them. Here, everybody talks bad about everybody, and we're actually drinking beer later on.
Well, as they say in politics, say whatever you want, just spell my name right.
Right, exactly. Well, but that's the whole thing. Like here, when I was a kid, and I think you would remember this too. We'd have a fight, right? A big bar brawl, right? And literally 5 minutes after the fight, we're going, oh man, I can't believe you hit me like that. Salute, right? We're drinking beer, wine, doing shots, and we're congratulating each other after we just wanted to kill each other. But here in China, you can't have that. That's so disrespectful. And I always wondered why they were so, that was such a big deal to them.
Well, they're members of a party. And I think one insult to one member insults the whole party. It's kind of like their families. I think as an Italian guy, which you are, if somebody seriously insults your mother, that's like death penalty stuff, right? Kind of the same thing.
Not my mother personally, because I was raised by wolves. But I mean, most Italians. but that's also the stupidity of the culture too. You gotta respect me, and you gotta do this, and you gotta, you need to. Well, maybe it's just a Jersey thing or a New York thing, that whole stupid, you need to respect me. Because, when I moved away from there, I learned that, oh shit, you actually have to earn somebody's respect. You have to actually do things. You have to be, and not so much kind, because I'm not necessarily, I mean, I don't know. what I am, to tell you the truth. But so many times I found that that mentality always got you more into trouble than anything else. When you're pushing respect, you know, in LA, it's kind of the same thing but a different way. You know, they just want to throw money at it. I think.
Yeah, and LA, here's the weird thing about LA, and I think it was born out of the entertainment industry. So people that were actually born here are pretty decent people, you know, they're stable, normal, but the ones that are here in the entertainment industry, it's a fact that the guy bagging your groceries may be running the movie studio the following week. So nobody ever insults anybody or says anything bad, no matter what it is. That's terrific. That's awesome. That's excellent, because he ends up writing the movie that you're auditioning for. And so people are so full of shit, and nobody will ever call a spade, up, down, green. Yeah, it's all good, man. No worries. And, you know, things that you ought to be worried about, no worries. And nobody knows where anyone stands ever. So you can't actually navigate nothingness successfully. So people are, you know, and and think about it too. We live in a box. Your car is a box. You drive it home to your apartment, which is a box. And then you go from a box to a box. We don't have a town hall. We don't have, like New York, you've got neighborhoods. We don't have neighborhoods. We've got a 50-mile long suburb with no central anything. So nobody knows. Yeah, you never have to.
Only exits, and
yes,
and you're on the fucking 405 or the 5, something like that, for about 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. So I used to have this crazy recurring thought. I was like, why? And we'll probably get into this in another podcast or something like that, because I always wondered why people in LA who were a $30,000 millionaire, right? They're barely above a poverty level, and they have to be driving a Mercedes, or they have to be driving a Lexus, and all their money.
No, you're on the East Coast. It's Range Rovers here.
Right. Okay.
That's how you know you're somebody, because you got a goddamn tank.
A Range Rover. So, yeah, but the thing is, I didn't realize the extent, because my whole life, Cary, I've lived, my commute was about 17 steps or an elevator. That's all my commute was, and it still is. It's still, I mean, I refuse to get in a car and go to a job. I will go to the airport, I will hop on an airplane, and I will go to wherever I have to go. But I refuse to get in a car and commute anywhere, because I go to California, as you know, all the time, right? Because we have companies there, and I'm in a rent-a-car, and I have to leave. I have to wake up at 5:30 to get someplace by 8 o'clock. And that's absolutely insane.
Oh, you have a shortcut then.
Right. I found a shortcut. And so then I realized that that's the reason why people spend all their money, every penny, on their car. Because they're in it for fucking 8 hours.
It's a second residence.
Right.
And you need a Range Rover because the homeless get in the way, and you got to be able to have a cow catcher on the front to get through, so you get there on time.
Well, and I think that people get their mail in their car. Like, they just flag down the postal guy. Because I don't know when they get to go home, or do they just go home, shower, change, and get back in the car to spend the next 3-4 hours. Because
yeah, it's like that. So, you know, you do half your business on your cell phone, because that's the only time you could do it. It's interesting, Rocco, because just a quick, because both of us love, how did it get the way it is today?
Right.
So in the 1920s, Los Angeles had the finest public transportation in the world. It was the envy of Europe. They modeled all the light rail. We had electrified trolleys like Pullman, quality electric trolleys. If you've seen the movie Chinatown, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
You could go from downtown LA all the way to the Pacific Ocean, down to the beach in Santa Monica. It took about 20 minutes for a nickel or a dime. Every street was electrified trolleys. And then in the 1940s, 50s, General Motors got together with Firestone tires, Firestone 4 rubber tires per General Motors car, and bought up all the trolley lines, paid off all the city council, ripped them all up, paved the tracks over, and put in smelly diesel buses. Now, nobody wanted to ride unair-conditioned, smelly diesel buses, which stop every block because it's a bus, not a trolley. And simultaneously, the very first suburb in America was born in a place where you've been, Rocco, Studio City. And the only way you could get there was by a car. And it had the first carport where you could open the trunk, pull the groceries out, and go right into the garage. And simultaneously rolled out millions of cars. And we went from 2 lanes to 10, which of course is just fucking awesome. 10 lanes, exhaust, 3 hours to go to get a half a mile.
Well, and I don't know who the engineers were back then, because it wasn't those Nazis that we stole for the space program, because you go from 10 lanes to 2 lanes to 5 lanes to 7 lanes to 2 lanes, and you're constantly bottlenecked in that whole clover leaf. I mean, I've never taken more clover leaves than going up towards Valencia, right? You go up towards Valencia. I used to get my oranges in Valencia, right? I used to go there and get cases and cases and cases from Las Vegas. I'd come down, but you're on a clover leaf going to Pasadena on I think it's the 210 or whatever. But there's the 14, the 210, the 5, the 86, the 25. You're like literally writing phone numbers the whole time through, and you're like, wait, okay, GPS. And even it was funny because when I was young, right, I came to California a few times, and that's when you had a map, right? And then when you rented a car, you got a map. And the maps, you're trying to read and trying to figure out where you were going. And there was at least 100 accidents a week just because people were trying to read maps. Now it's their phone, and they're still getting into the same accidents, but because they're on their phone or they're texting.
I found a solution to much of this, and this is a good way for us to near the end of this podcast, because we're slaves to the clock like everyone else, mostly just to be polite, keep it tight.
Well, you know what? Most likely when you say that, there's another 20 minutes into this, because
of course.
Because our finish takes about 20 minutes. It's like our phone calls. And we've never really gotten into
you know what it is? It's both of us have to have the last word. We just have to have that last word. I'm going to let you have the last word unless I steal it. But here's the solution to the traffic. I bought a Vespa. There's an Italian piece of genius made after World War II, because all that rubble was in the street and you needed to get around. So they created, the Vespa, the Wasp, this little motorcycle that could get through rocks and rubbles and crap. And so in California, it is legal to ride a motorcycle down the middle lane. So wherever
I was told that.
It's true.
It is true that you can do that?
Yes. So I get on my Vespa.
Stupidest shit. That's not even funny.
It's legal.
Anymore.
It's kind of like Florida. You don't have to wear a helmet. You don't have to do shit. You can be drunk. You can get on a motorcycle. It's fun. So we have this middle lane thing. And I take my Vespa and I shoot past 40 cars right up to the light and then jet forward. And I get where everyone else is going that might take them 40 minutes. I get there in 10 minutes. And I will never get in a car again unless it's raining or cold or I got to go to the grocery store and put a bunch of stuff in the trunk. But I live on a Vespa, and because it only rains, 8 minutes out of a year, it's great. And I recommend it because you're out in the air, breathing all the particulates and the pollution without any filtration. It's awesome.
Well, but you get a really good immune system from that. I believe in taking in as many particulates so that your body can just build it. It's like building muscle, right? Taking all that shit, and then if you don't die of the lung cancer, you'll actually be healthier because your body will be able to be more resilient.
And we should admit it, making out with your dog is the best way to beef up your immune system. Because that dog has been out there, and let me tell you, you
licking
want
his
nature.
ass, I mean, you don't know what he has in his fecal matter, but that's that's the stuff that makes you just want to be healthy. No, but like Kobe Bryant said the exact same thing, but he was able to afford a helicopter, and he said, why would I ever want to drive 2 hours to go 2 miles when I can take a helicopter? It doesn't cost me literally that much more,
Except a life.
right? Well there's that, there is that.
There's that little wrinkle. But other than that, it's great.
It's a little wrinkle in what the helicopter people talk about. But I did, it's so funny. I was thinking today about our first podcast and about how this whole thing came to be. And it's funny how things do come to be, because most people out there, they don't, they hope and they wish and they dream and they think and they have all these great ideas, but they never execute, and we knew each other, and then we kind of fell out of touch, and then we were reunited again through a friend of ours, and we started talking on the phone, talking about the stupidity and the lack of truth as Americans. And we're two of the most patriotic Americans. We're both constitutionalists for the most part. We both believe in the American dream, but we have come through basically a Shawshank Redemption kind of sewer to get where we are on the opposite sides.
Yeah.
That's the funny part. We're on the opposite side, but we agree on a lot of things, more things. And I'm always wondering how America's become this insane asylum. But then it goes back to the beginning of the podcast when we talked about the mentally ill being let out of the insane asylums.
Well, it's interesting, I think the public has been reduced to fans of a team. I'm on the red team and I'm going to be a fan of the red team. And then people are on the blue team, and the team doesn't mean shit because it doesn't actually do anything except make things worse. And if people don't actually know what's going on around them, they don't understand the Constitution. And we're not talking about you got to memorize every amendment and understand all of it, but just sort of the general gist of what this is. And it's hard. If you're I use my mother as an example. She's dead, so that's not the example. But when she was alive, she did her due diligence. She read the local paper every day. She watched the local news on TV. She did what she thought was to be informed. And she was completely clueless about what's actually going on in the world. Not her fault. People eat whatever's food is put on the plate. and the media serves what it serves, and that's it. You want to have sweet potato fries. I'm sorry, it's not on the menu. Therefore, you're not going to be an expert at sweet potato fries. So it's hard for the average guy who's really showing up, and maybe he does read the paper, maybe he does this and that. He's missing a whole lot because it's not available to him. So I think part of our responsibility, and I know you agree with me on this, is, we got to go back to old-fashioned discussions like we are now and talk about, well, what's the point? Well, here's the point. What do you mean by First Amendment? Well, it actually means this. It doesn't actually mean that,
Well, and with the whole cancel culture thing, like, I don't mind boycotting something if it's legitimate. If you have, pedophiles in the Boy Scouts, I think you should kind of boycott the Boy Scouts a little bit, or you have something that's bad, like aspartame. I would boycott NutraSweet. It's a poison. We're allowed to boycott, but to make it so that people's livelihoods, for no reason other than you don't like what they said, not what they did, not what they're about, but what they said, right? Because we're going to probably be, I'm waiting for the social media backlash on us, because we're going to talk about shit that everyone's afraid to talk about.
Yeah, and just to touch on that First Amendment thing, because the founding daddies, of which they're my ancestors, two of which signed the Declaration of Independence against
How
Fat
cool is
George
that,
there.
though, man? I'm like so jealous of you.
It is kind of cool.
My relatives all came off the boat, and they were probably killing people and doing things that.
But what's interesting is the Declaration of Independence. Part of that was insisting that the king force immigration into America, because the people that were already here had to do all the work. And the king kept promising to let people come in and help grow the country and wouldn't do it. That was part of the Declaration of Independence, was if you're not going to supply labor here, fuck you. We're going to break off and do it ourselves. Of course, it's early capitalism, which is you pay to build it, you do the infrastructure, you set it all up, and once it's built, we're going to kick you out.
Yeah.
It's America, baby. Right? But back to the First Amendment.
Well, creative destructionism. That's
yes.
what that's for.
Yes. It's early manifest destiny before we knew what was in store.
Right.
In the First Amendment, one of the things that it talks about, and the thinking behind it with the founding fathers, was not so much that you should be able to yell at the king and get away with it. It was simple. You know that if you don't let people scream and yell when they're really pissed off, frustrated, feel ripped off, they act out. They do something bad. So if you can just stand up in the middle of the town square and yell, fuck you to the government, then you're going to go home and have dinner. And nothing really bad is going to happen. Nothing's going to erupt. So part of it was a release valve. It's brilliant.
Well, it was a good pressure. It's just like a pressure, just like we talk about our pressure cookers and whatever, like what we're dealing with now, for so long. But like there's more instigation with the Antifa stuff, but protest.
I gotta just jump in, because, and has anyone ever met anyone in Antifa?
No.
There isn't any. It's bullshit. And why would anyone be against something that's against fascism? If I remember, World War II was the United States fighting fascism. So anti-fascism.
Fascism and breaking into Target and breaking into Nike stores and breaking into boutiques, small businesses all over, in like Port.
There's no Antifa. It's bullshit. It's like Emmanuel Goldstein in 1984. No such person. There's no Antifa. There's no Antifa. There's a bunch of unemployed black people. There's a bunch of unemployed white people, and they're all young, and they're all pissed off, and they have no future, none, zero. No jobs, no employer out there hiring 50 million people. We don't care what your skill sets are. There is no such thing. They are screwed, and they know it, and they're pissed. So they're acting out, but there's no Antifa. I mean,
why
holy
are they
shit.
pissed though, Harrison? Because they went to college, they got a woman's studies degree, and they thought that it was a good idea to have a woman's studies degree, and then they need to make $130,000 and start as the fucking CEO of a company.
No, they need to start as the mayor's deputy for 130,000.
Right, exactly. That's what they should have done. First, get on Grindr, below the mayor, and then get 100. Come on. That's America right there. That's called trading for goods and services. That's what we